So I've kept my presentation pretty simple. It's going to be fairly short. And right now I feel I've been in this like world politics. I've got Mulu and Vietnam talking about how big their caves are and all this. And it kind of reminds me we're talking about North Korea and America, with China sat quietly observing what's going on, and probably is generally either the solution to the problem or, as I probably won't tell you, might be the biggest cave in the world, or find the biggest caves in the world. So China, it's a great honour to be able to talk about China. I love China, I'm now kind of living there. And a few little stats about China. China has the biggest population in the world, and only second or close to it by India. And we're going to come back to this. Just to bring it into perspective, UK is 66 million, which is less than 1% of the world population, and China has over 19% or 19% of the world's population. As times of square area of each country, China ranks third. So it's the third biggest landmass of countries. And the UK is 81. So we're privileged to have such a small little country. The interesting thing about this is when you look at the percentage of limestone in the country. So in the world, we have roughly about 133 million kilometres squared of landmass, of which 13% is limestone. China has 9% of that complete volume of limestone, which is quite high for a single country. If we look at Britain, Britain has 0.04% of the limestone in the world. But of that amount of limestone, compared to our actual size of England or Britain, we have 21%. So overall, we've got quite a lot of limestone to go and look at, but it's in small little pockets. The Chinese limestone is the red, and what we want to focus, this is China here, and what we can see is this massive red blob of limestone sitting here. So as we'll see, most of the British expeditions have been into this area, and particularly down in the south around here. And this is kind of a provincial map of China, and what we can see is that these names will be familiar to anyone that's gone to China. Most of the expeditions have been around in Yunnan, Guangxi, Guizhou, and in this area, this is Chongqing, which has been heavily expeditioned. And up here, the limestone's less, so less people have been up into these areas. So, what are Chinese caves like? They have a particular phenomenon of things called chenkins. These are massive surface shafts that drop down generally to a river system, and that's generally how they're formed. And what we can see here, this is Shaozai Chenkin. It's one of the largest chenkins in China, or it is actually. And you can see here, this is the floor of the chenkin, and we can't quite see the surface up here. And a very early shot, you can see there's no path being made here. If we look at, it's 662 metres deep. So that's quite a big hole going from surface down to the floor. And it's over 500 metres wide. So these things can be pretty big, and they're all over China. This is again slightly further down, a more modern shot. And what we can see here is the path's now been built, and you wiggle down here, and then you can access the bottom of the chenkin with a tea house. And what happens, I guess, with most places, they want to develop these things for tourism, so they can make money for the local population. And indeed, this is one place that's been developed heavily. And this is a picture I've stole off the web, and this is actually at the bottom of the chenkin. There's a stream that flows out of the chenkin, and this is how they form. We need a river to transport the collapsed rock from the chenkin out to a different place. So these are big, big structures. We'll come back to this photo a bit later. And this is another Chenkin. This is Wangjiang Chenkin, or Zhuangjiangkong. It's currently China's second deepest cave. The Chenkin itself is about 250 meters deep until it forms into a cave system. And this is some Chinese cavers doing an expedition there. Again, fantastic shot. You can see the bottom down here. It's quite a good buzz if you're one of the first people to push one of these Chenkin's. Another Chenkin, this is up north, just gets you the feel Vietnam and the guys, they seem to have big, long passages. China seems to have very big surface deep shafts that are quite good fun to push. We also continue the shaft theme underground. This is in Miaokeng. This is a 500-meter shaft underground, and it literally is a 500-meter shaft. If I can stand here, drop a stone, it will not hit the side until it hits the bottom. It will drop straight down the bottom. This is a shot, Robbie Schoen shot looking up from the bottom of the Chenkin, the shaft, and then this is a shot looking down. However, this is only 250 meters up the shaft. There's another 250 meters to go to get out. We put 39, I think, rebelays in to drop the shaft. The first time we went down, it's fantastic. After a while, it gets a bit boring because it's just another rebelay. So it's good fun. They're good on the way up because it gives you a break, but yeah. What I'm not going to mention is the largest chamber in the world because I'm China, so we're going to keep quiet. It was unfortunately found by the French, and that's also why I'm not going to mention it. Mao Chamber, dependent on what the International Federation, biggest, deepest committee have decided, currently Mao Chamber is the biggest chamber in the world. So this is where China comes in. We're now playing world politics. It's got some fantastic big horizontal caves. I don't think quite on the scale of Vietnam. You can see the people walking in here. Again, entrance is over 100 meters high, and these passages again go into the hillside for miles. This is at the bottom of that Chenkin we saw, the world's biggest, and this is the resurgence of the river. So again, big river passages and big water. And again, just more big passages. So China has its fair share of large stuff. It also has some pretty stuff, some big styles. Some of the show caves are pretty good. Furundong, unfortunately I couldn't get a picture of Furundong. Furundong is probably one of the prettiest show caves I think I've been in. Very nice. There's also some fantastic crystals if you're lucky to go in the right place, a bit like Lechugia. It's also got some crazy hair gypsum. And some very fine, delicate stuff. There is actually quite a weird thing going on here. There is a selenite needle crystal that goes down here and then comes back and goes back into this mess. We don't quite know how that's happened, but that's kind of quite interesting. Again, helictites and things like that. If you're lucky enough, there's plenty of this in China. And this is kind of I put in for a bit of fun, but it is actually formation. They're like Wotsits. Remember these old crisps you used to eat? Wotsits. Again, how these are formed, I'm not quite sure. But they really are like that. They're just like bits of finger or old, and they're circular. So, and China, I was once digging at the bottom of a sump pool in Peru, and Chris said, you can take the man out of Mendip, but you can't take Mendip out of the man. So there is also some misery passages that you can go to China to do. So this is Duncan down at the bottom of the Chenqing system when we were trying to make the connection, surveying in Miserable. Josh trying to push some miserable tight passage. And Belly Tom again doing the same. A little squeeze we had to go through. And this is after a trip again in Chenxing. Some tight riffs and Carmel, as you can see a leg. This is bruises where it was quite awkward to get through. Previous exploration, yes, now this is very interesting. The Brits go out to China and we're all thinking, great, we're going to find some new passage. And some of the time you can. But what you don't realise, a lot of the time, some of this passage has already been discovered and explored. And the reason being nitrate mining. So before the days we could industrial produce potash for gunpowder, they went into the caves and they dug up black guano and they processed it underground quite simply by putting it in these dikes they built, mixing it with water, filtrating it off, and then boiling off the filtrate so that the the crystals, you'd get potassium nitrate out. And these are all over China. Every cave, generally you go in, unless you've had to climb or there's been a real complicated obstacle, you'll find these. And there's lots of mining artifacts. And there's lots of places we've been to, we do not know how the Chinese have got in there. And we're wandering along in our wellies, my nice thermal, and my waterproof stuff, a scurrying headlight that lights it up. And this shot, this is a bare footprint here. And the guys have probably got a small little loincloth on, and you'll find in China lots of evidences where they're just using burning torches. And that kind of is a bit belittling after you thinking you're macho, got down to this place, and you've discovered that the Chinese guys have been down there. They were tenacious, absolutely amazing. What's the Brits done in China? Well, we're probably talking to the old guys that went out there to start with. In the late 70s, probably the early 80s, we started going to China. There are reports of a train journey, and the said person made a comment that he saw more cave entrances in that train journey than he had for his entire life, and that inspired other people. Wow, there must be a lot of caves in China, we better go and check it out. And with the help of the Karst Institute, lots of expeditions have gone now to the China. GAR Peru has funded and helped over 65 expeditions to China. There are many more expeditions that have been done that have not had GAR Peru funding and unfortunately have lost off that record. So we've done an awful lot in China. I've left this as two X's, as it's very difficult to quantify actually how much survey passage we think the Brits have surveyed in China. We think probably it's over excess of 800 kilometres. Homegui has done over 500 kilometres, and a lot of the other early expeditions have been racking up 50 kilometres, probably more in some of the expeditions. So we could probably safely say about 800 plus kilometres have been surveyed in China. What's our notable achievements? The Brits have currently found the deepest cave in China. This is in the Chenxing system, the Chiken system, and we go from Liko Alkosha to this point here, which is Dongba, and that's just over 1,000 metres. Unfortunately, the through trip has never ever been done. The Chinese built a dam over here, which flooded, unfortunately, the lower section of the cave, and we've managed to find a survey station from the Dongba, which allowed us to connect the two caves, but we can, unless we do some serious diving, a through trip in that deepest cave will never ever be done. We found the second longest cave in China. Shuanghedong, this is the French cave. It's over 200 metres, 200 kilometres long, and that's an out-of-date figure already. They just keep finding more and more. At one time, we thought we might be able to give them a run for the money, but unfortunately not now. Samandong is now 72 kilometres long, and that's our second deepest second longest cave in the world, in China. Oops, done black again. If we could connect Samandong and Awandong together, they're about 150 metres apart, and we've looked tenaciously to try and connect them. We would definitely have the second longest cave in China, and that would probably stay. So that's a project that's been ongoing for ages, but we just can't connect them. And we might be able to do the highest bolt climb in the world in China. Currently, we believe the highest bolt climb is the Dark Star in Austria. I'm now 200 metres up an Avon in China, and I can see another 100 metres, and I'm pretty sure we'll pass the Dark Star record. So that'll be 3 pretty good achievements that the Brits have done in China. Things are changing. Once upon a time, the Brits could show up, or foreigners could show up in China, and we could wander willy-nilly where we liked, and no one asked. They thought, what are these strange foreigners doing here, wanting to go down the caves? Why don't they help me grow some things to eat? We can't do that anymore. The authorities have got a lot more sensitive about foreigners wandering around, and if we didn't have the Cast Institute in Shanghai to help us smooth things over, open doors, it would be very, very difficult for us to still cave in China. So we do have to thank Shanghai and the Cast Institute massively for still allowing us to go caving in China. And the other great thing is the Chinese caving scene has changed massively. Again, when the Brits first went out to China, very few Chinese cavers around, and it has to be said their competence wasn't great. Right now, that's all changed. There's lots of Chinese clubs coming together. They're all SRT, pretty competent. They can bolt, they can rig. They're beginning to survey pretty well. And it won't be long before Chinese will be doing foreign expeditions. Now, if you remember my very first slide, China has, I think it was 1.3 billion people. So if you take a tiny little fraction of that are cavers, there's going to be tens of millions of cavers coming our way. Their exploration style's slightly different. We kind of have small little units, I call them little SAS units, going in with ropes and stuff and hitting the target and coming out again. The Chinese is more like a siege mentality and set up a big camp and people just go there to cook and have fun and allow you to go caving. It's great. This good story here, this is a cave that Tim Allen was going to push, and my Chinese girlfriend said, do you want to come and push a cave? Yeah, cool, that's all right. So we turn up, and the night I was there, someone showed me a video of Tim throwing a rock down the cave, and we're going there tomorrow, and that was slightly worrying for me and a bit embarrassing. You know, there was a lot of phone calls to Tim to say, sorry, it's out of my control. At times, you can see it's a bit frustrating. It's not hit the target, and there's a bit of hair twiddling, which soothes me, and I can generally cope with their methods. But they are brilliant, and the Chinese cavers are good. So the scene's changing, and the days of us just roaming around have gone, which is kind of good because Chinese cavers are coming on, and they're brilliant. Great team atmosphere. They all love it. So that's kind of just about my talk, really. I've got to say thanks again to the Guilin Cast Institute in Shanghai for helping the Brits. I've got to thank my photographers, because without those, you never get a presentation. That's it. Thank you.